All right, all right, all right. Let's get into it. Shalom, shalom, everyone. Again, this is a basic breakdown of scripture series, part two. Coming back in with it. I'm your speaker, James Chandler, Brother Yaakov, and let's get into it. Okay, we left off talking about the Sabbath and everything. We were in Genesis 1 in part one of a basic breakdown scripture series. Now we're in Genesis chapter 2. Today it is Yom, all right? It is Yom Shalishi, Tuesday, and this is a short Bible study or Torah study. Again, I'm at work, so excuse the noise, excuse my pauses, excuse my stops, and my excuses. So we're going to hop right in. This is part two, a basic breakdown of scripture series. Sorry about that. Again, I said I'm at work, so we're going to try to get through this as quick as possible. So we're still in Genesis, Bereshith in Hebrew, Bereshith. Let's continue. Genesis 2. Right. We have a few terms for you. First, we're going to start off with the introduction to Genesis. Okay. Which I should have did when I started Genesis 1, but we're going to jump right in with Genesis 2. All right. The name Genesis means origin or beginning. The book tells about the creation of the universe, the origin of human beings, the beginning of sin and suffering in the world, and about Elohim's way of dealing with people. Bereshith or Genesis can be divided into two main parts. Chapters 1 through 11, the creation of the world and the early history of the human race. Here are the accounts of Adam and Eve, or Adam and Hawa, Cain and Abel, Noah in the flood, and the Tower of Babylon, or Tower of Babel. Two, we have chapters 12 through 50, the history of the early ancestors of the Israelites. The first is Abraham, who was notable for his faith and his obedience to Elohim. Then follow the stories of his son Isaac or Yitzhak and grandson Jacob or Yaakov, also called Yisrael or Israel, and of Jacob's 12 sons, the founders of the 12 tribes of Yisrael, Israel. Special attention is given to one of the sons, Yasuf or Joseph, and the events that brought Yaakov, Jacob, and his other sons with their families to live in Mitzrayim or Egypt. While this book tells stories about people, it is first and foremost an account of what Elohim has done. It begins with the affirmation that Elohim created the universe, and it ends with a promise that Elohim will continue to show his concern for his people. Throughout the book, the main character is Elohim, who judges and punishes those who do wrong, leads and helps his people, and shapes their history. This ancient book was written to record the story of a people's faith and to help keep that faith alive. So let's get into it. Probably. Sorry about that. Hopefully you guys can hear me. You know, my screen is blinking off and on. Hopefully you can see my slides real clear. Pishon. We're going to see this in scripture. Let's get into Genesis chapter 2 first, okay? And so it says, and so the whole universe was completed. And I'm reading from the Good News Bible today, okay? And it says, and so the whole universe was completed by the seventh day. Elohim finished what he had been doing and stopped working. He blessed the seventh day and set it apart as a special day, because by that day he had completed his creation and stopped working. And that is how the universe was created. And again, you can go back and read Genesis chapter 1, okay, on your own terms. The Garden of Eden. When Yahweh Elohim made the universe, there were no plants on the earth and no seeds had sprouted, because he had not sent any rain, and there was no one to cultivate the land. Right? So again, it's bringing back up what was just discussed in Genesis chapter 1. You know, so it's going back to the complete beginning, retelling the story. As I said, Genesis 1 is a mirror of Genesis 2. Good. Sorry about that again. Still at work, okay? Yeah, right. Yeah, pretty good. Okay. So there was no seeds. No seeds had sprouted because he hadn't sent any rain, and there was no one to cultivate the land. Okay. And pay attention to the word cultivate, because I think, you know, scripture is going to mention it again, but I want to jump in on that definition too. Okay. But let's get through this. Verse 6 says, but water will come up from beneath the surface and water the ground. Then Yahweh Elohim took some soil from the ground and formed a man out of it. He breathed life, giving breath into his nostrils, and the man began to live. So this is Yahweh Elohim breathing the breath of life into the nostrils of man. Now, I want to hit on this real quick. There's a doctrine out there saying that Yahweh is the dragon god. He's an idol, you know, right? And that the Bible is a lie. Of course, this is all that anti-biblical nonsense, okay? And they deny Yahweh, right? So they're saying that he's the dragon, and it has a lot to do with one of the Egyptian pharaohs, with King Tut as his son, right? Which supposed to represent Joshua. So there's a doctrine going on with that. But if this is the case, right? Yahweh being a dragon, let's knock that out the way, right? You know, and he breathes out fire, and they came out with this scripture. You know, they use scripture to, you know, to back up their belief system or a lie, right? You know, just like Satan, he used scripture, but it's not, you know, it's a mixture of falsehood and truth, you know. So, you know, they say he's the dragon, and dragons don't have fire of their own, you know. They go up to this mountain and they eat the copper, and the copper is what, you know, get digested in their gut, and then when they breathe, the fire comes because of the copper, you know. So think about it, right? If Yahweh is this dragon and he's breathing out fire, okay, we just read, right, Genesis 2. Again, like I said, when we go to Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, it can knock a lot of false doctrines out the way with just these two books, right? So if he's this dragon as supposed, right, you know, scripture says that, let's read verse 6 again. But water will come up from beneath the surface and water the ground. Okay, verse 7. Then Yahweh Elohim took some soil from the ground and formed a man, right? Out of it, he breathed life, not fire. He didn't breathe fire, right? He breathed life. giving breath into his nostrils, and the man began to live. Now, common sense, and I'm not the smartest person in the world, but you too, thank you. I'm not the smartest person in the world, you know, but if you're breathing out fire and you breathe into a nostril of a man, you're not going to breathe life into them. You're going to burn them up. You're going to burn them up. But again, so we have to push that doctrine out the way. He breathed life into man, and he became a living soul. He began to live. That's what scripture says, right? Then Yahweh Elohim planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man he had formed, right? So again, he lived, and he gave him a home, right? He made all kinds of beautiful trees grow there and produce good fruit. In the middle of the garden stood the tree that gives life and the tree that gives knowledge of what is good and what is bad. Okay, so we see that that's there. Verse 10 goes on to say, a stream flowed in Eden and watered the garden beyond Eden. It divided into 4 rivers. The first river is Pishon. Pishon, it flows around the country of Havilah. Pure gold is found there, and also rare perfume and precious stones.
So, based on your
Now, about the river Pishon, you know, because, you know, it's kind of hard for certain people to determine where the Garden of Eden is or was. You know, there's so many doctrines out there about that, you know. And I'm not going to go into that right now. I'm not going to go real deep. Again, this is the basics, okay? Basics, the basic breakdown of scripture, right? So, but think about it. Just like Yahweh's name, it hasn't been lost. It hasn't been lost. You know, he tells us in his word, it's not in heaven where we got to go get it. It's right here amongst us. His word is amongst us. Salvation is amongst us. What we need is amongst us, right? And it's just the knowledge of
It's 3 o'clock.
And it's just the knowledge of trying to find it out. Seek him and you will find, right? Matthew 7:7. Seek, you will find. Knock, the door will be open. You know, knock, the door will be open. Seek, you will find. Ask, knock, seek. All right. Ask, it shall be given. Knock, the door will be open. Seek, you will find, right? So, you know, it goes to show that it hasn't been lost. And the thing is, Pishon, it flows around the country of Havilah. It had pure gold, right? It has pure gold. It was found there, right? Now, think about the colonizers, right? You don't think that these people were after the gold? We hear so much about the gold being stolen from Africa, things being stolen from Africa or the Middle East. If we can even say that, right? But the Holy Land, we're gonna just say that scripture, right? Holy Land, right? Which of course is a little small part of that, Jerusalem, but wherever the Israelites' foot touched, it became their land, or it was a blessing. Abraham, his seed, like Yahweh told Abraham, right? He would be a blessing to all the nations. So, just to put that out there, but they know where this place is. It's hidden, from us, but it's not lost, right? Just think about it, right? Somebody went and got that gold. Somebody already, like they say, the X marks the spot. X marks the spot. So somebody knows the spot, but they want to keep it hidden, you know, but as far as we know today, the land is the land. There's many doctrines about whether that's the land or not. Jerusalem and where they got the temple, but again, uh, the Messiah makes some clear points, about what will happen in the end times, and the temple will be built, and his foot will hit the Mount of Olives, or Olivet, right? You will have to remove those two places and place him somewhere else if that's not really the spot. And again, time will tell with that, right? Time will tell. And also the anti-Messiah must come. And again, the abomination that causes desolation, right? All that has to take place. It's prophecy. So wherever those things take place, that's the spot. X marks the spot, and again, time will tell, right? Just like with the name, there's so many people saying different names. Again, time will tell, right? But it hasn't been lost. That's the thing. It hasn't been lost. People are just stuck and stiff-necked on what they believe. They won't accept something because the white man's doctrine, or the white man wrote the Bible, or it's always, since slavery has done some damage to our people, and we can't trust everything that we see. And again, pros and cons to that. Pros and cons to that. So I'm just put that out there. Let's get back to it. Pishon, it flows around the country of Havilah. Pure gold is found there, and also rare perfume and precious stones. 13 on down. The second river is Gihon. It flows around the country of Cush. The third river is Tigris, which flows east of Assyria. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. Then Yahweh Elohim placed the man in the Garden of Eden to, here we go, cultivate it and guard it. Cultivate it and guard it. Think about that, right? Man had a job. One good job, right? Like they say, this was your only job and you messed it up, The only thing you had to do was do this, and you still messed up, right? Adam and Eve, Adam and Hawa, right? They were supposed to cultivate it and guard it. Just like we're told in scripture to guard the commandments, right? Guard my commandments, right? That includes the Sabbath. Everything else that Yahweh tells us to obey and to commit to, the instruction, right? Let's look at that word cultivate. It means prepare and use land for crops or gardening. Okay, till, plow, dig, turn, hoe, farm, work, prepare, fertilize. Try to acquire or develop a quality, sentiment, or skill he cultivated in air and indifference, right? Try to acquire, pursue, court, try to develop, work hard at, foster, right? Prepare and use, right? We got to prepare to keep the commandments. Prepare, even with the Sabbath, we have to prepare beforehand to keep it, right? Make preparation for the Sabbath. Prepare, use what we've learned from Torah, apply it to our lives, right? Cultivate, prepare, and use. Oh, scripture speaks to us, right? Scripture is indeed speaking to us. All right, I'm going to come out from that, go back to the slides. Okay. I'll finish up some scripture, okay? So again, then Yahweh Elohim placed the men in the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and guard it. 16 on down, he says, he told them, you may eat the fruit of any tree in the garden, except the tree that gives knowledge of what is good and what is bad, right? Commandment. Gave them a job to work the land, right? and he gave him a commandment, what not to do and what to do, and what to eat. You may eat the fruit of any tree in the garden, except the tree that gives knowledge of what is good and what is bad. You must not eat the fruit of that tree. If you do, you will die the same day. Now, again, you know, we have to think Adam didn't know what death was, you know, but I'm sure that, you know, Yahweh made that clear to him, you know. However, it's made clear to us in scripture. It's made clear to us when we see our loved ones die before us, right? But clearly we haven't experienced it for ourselves. So Adam never experienced death, right? He never experienced death. Right? He said, if you do, you will die the same day. Die the same day. It's key on that, right? The same day you will die, right? You know, verse 18 on down says, then Yahweh Elohim said, it is not good for the man to live alone. I will make a suitable companion to help him. To help him. So he took some soil from the ground and formed all the animals and all the birds. Then he brought them to the man to see what he would name them. And that is how they all got their names. So he didn't right away make a woman for him. He gave him some more work to do. He made them animals, you know, you know, to support the lonely state or being alone, you know. But he gave him another job to name them, right? So think think about, okay, he got a place, right? He got a job, an income, but he gave him extra income with another job naming the animals, right? So it's good to have extra income, right? You know, on top of the job you have, right? So a good success tool, you can learn successful traits, you know, and this is just Genesis 2, hidden in the scriptures, right? Ways to success, right? Keeping yourself positively productive. And I got a book out, you know, my fourth book I wrote talks about that. My life's purpose. Look for it on Amazon. My life's purpose. How to keep yourself positively productive. 17 steps to success. Right? It's not suitable. All right. Then Yahweh Elohim said, it is not good for the man to live alone. I will make a suitable companion to help him. So he took some soil from the ground and formed all the animals and all the birds. And then he brought them to the man to see what he would name them. And that is how they all got their names. So the man named all the birds and all the animals, but not one of them was a suitable companion to help him. Then Yahweh Elohim made the man fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took out one of the man's ribs and closed up the flesh. He formed a woman out of the rib and brought her to him. Then the man said at last, here is one of my own kind, bone taken from my bone and flesh from my flesh. Woman is her name, because she was taken out of man. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united with his wife, and they become one. The man and the woman were both naked, but they were not embarrassed. So again, this is marriage right here, you know, a vow being made, You know, um, even the rule to leave your mother's house and join and cleave unto your wife. You know, this is advice or the protocol for the man when it comes time to obtain his wife. You gotta leave your mother's house. Have your own place, have your stuff together, you know, and commit to the marriage. So that was Genesis 2, right? We're gonna look at some terms here, a few terms. Number 2, Pishon was one of the rivers. That was the first river named. And it means changing, extension of the mouth. Next, we have Gihon, means bursting forth or gushing. Next, we have Tigris or Hiddekel, rapid stream, swift. Next, we have Euphrates, Ha-Nahar, means to gush forth, break forth. And there's a meaning that says that makes fruitful. And 6, the Garden of Eden or Gan Eden or Gan Elohim, fruitful or well watered. And that indeed it was, right? The Sabbath continued. Okay. And of course, I wasn't looking at Genesis 2 from right here, but it's the KJV how it reads. But we're gonna go from Genesis 2 now to let's get into talking about the Sabbath, right? Rest well and obey. Okay. We're gonna look at Isaiah 58, 13 through 14. How you going? All right. Bear with me. It reads like this: If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of Yahweh, honorable, and shalt honor him, right? Not doing thy own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words, then shalt thou delight thyself in Yahweh, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob or Jacob thy father, for the mouth of Yahweh hath spoken it, right? So Yahweh doesn't want us to turn our foot from the Sabbath by doing, and this is how we turn our foot from it, by doing our own pleasure on that day, right? Not making it a delight. Keeping the Sabbath honors Yahweh, but doing the opposite dishonors him. You should honor him, right? Doing this, right? We have to find ourselves not doing our own ways on that day, not finding our own pleasure. You know, I think I want to do this. I think I want to go on a vacation. I think I want to get on a plane and go here or go there, or I think I want to go fishing. So many things, right? I want to go to this wedding today. You know, nor speaking thine own words. You know, if it's not scriptural, all right, we shouldn't be discussing it on the Shabbat. If it doesn't pertain or gives glory to Yahweh, we shouldn't be talking about it on the Shabbat. Let's look at more scripture. Exodus 16, 23 through 30. Right. Wait a minute, what happened? Something's going on. I think that popped up there, or what that is. Encourage. No. Exodus 16. Let's just go to Exodus 16. All right. Website moving slow, y'all. Give me time. On the 23, verse 23 to 30. I believe that was. Let me check again. Yep. All right. Let's dive in, okay? And he said unto them, this is that which Yahweh hath said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto Yahweh. Bake that which ye will bake today, and seethe that ye will seethe, and that which remaineth overlay up for you to be kept until the morning. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moshe bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. And Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto Yahweh. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the Sabbath day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. So we shouldn't go out buying anything or cooking, do it all before the Sabbath comes. So when the Sabbath comes, you can just eat it. You don't have to go out and buy or sell, right? 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the Sabbath day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the Sabbath day for together, and they found none, right? And they chose to disobey anyway, right? And they still ain't find nothing, right? And as Moshe said, because this was a commandment given by Yahweh, and Yahweh doesn't lie, right? And Yahweh said unto Moshe, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? Right? So that goes to the laws done away with doctrine. We can knock that out the way, right? And Yahweh says, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? And he's saying that same thing today, right? And we have to ask ourselves, why is he saying that same thing today? Because he doesn't change, right? Scripture says, you know, he's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore, right? See for that Yahweh hath given you the Sabbath. Therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the Sabbath day. So the people rested on the Sabbath day, right? Let's look at some other witnesses about the Sabbath. It's giving me a hard time moving this thing, okay? Matthew 12, verse 9 through 12. And when he was departed thence, he went into their synagogue. And behold, there was a man which had his hand withered. And they asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days? That they might accuse him. And he said unto them, what man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep? And if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold on it and lift it out? How much then is a man better than a sheep? Wherefore, pay attention to this. It is lawful to do well on the Sabbath days. Yep. Yep. So you can do good on the Sabbath. You can heal on the Sabbath, right? It has nothing to do with the working. It has nothing to do, you know, working for pay or buying or selling or cooking, right? But let's get into more scriptural references, some more witnesses, right? We need 2 or 3 witnesses, right? Jeremiah 17:22. Let's look at that. Neither carry forth a burden out of your house on the Sabbath day, neither do ye any work, but hallow ye the Sabbath day as I commanded your fathers. Right? No work. Last but not least here on this list is Nehemiah 13:15 through 21. Uh-oh. Nehemiah 13, right? Gotta get my old laptop time to catch up. All right. Moving as quickly as possible. Okay. While we're waiting on that, let's look at some of Judaism's today. Scripture talks about, a certain people who claim to be Jews but are not, but are the synagogue of Satan, when you read Deuteronomy 28, the blessings and curses, and we already found out, you know, and that's one of the evidence of who the people of Israel are, the children of Israel, and you know, they were brought on ships, they were slaves, they were the slaves, right? And then we get to these people, right? And just like the Pharisees and scribes came saying that Joshua, you can't heal on the Sabbath, Joshua, was him and his apostles were, in the grain fields, and they were, eating, again, they weren't cooking, they weren't buying or selling, they was enjoying a meal, they was enjoying food, right? That what didn't have to be cooked. You could just throw it in your mouth and eat it, right? But again, the Pharisees thought they were breaking Torah. And again, we have to separate and know the difference between the traditions of man and Torah within itself, because these people here, they don't just look at Torah, they look at the Talmud, and other things that goes outside of, and it's almost like Jeremiah 8:8 talks about, you know, they try to make a fence around the law, as if to protect it. These are the same people that don't even pronounce the name of the creator. They don't say Yahweh. They call him Adonai, or they stick with titles, right? Because they say his name is too holy. Again, making that fence around Torah. When again we talked about it in part one. Scripture tells us to proclaim the name, publish the name, say the name, right? Bless the name. So again, it shows traditions of man, and and this is the things that we find ourselves trying to help the Most High when Yahweh already knows what He's doing, and it causes falsehood, a mixture of falsehood and truth, right, to creep in. So let's look at some of their Shabbat laws, right? And again, it's a mixture of falsehood and truth, right? Shabbat laws are quite complex, requiring careful study and a qualified teacher. At first, it's often overwhelming and seems like an impossible number of restrictions, but spending Shabbat with others who are Shabbat observant.
Hey, you doing?
All right.
Glad to have, man.
Thank you. Again, sorry about that. Will show you that eventually you too will become comfortable with the Shabbat laws. As long as you realize that becoming Shamor, Shabbat observant is a gradual process rather than an overnight transformation, you will also recognize that the wealth of details provides for a lifetime of scholarship. Even those who have been keeping Shabbat for years find that there is always more to learn on this subject. Okay. let's start with some basic activities from which we refrain on Shabbat. So here they have writing. You can't write on the Shabbat. You can't erasing and tearing on the Shabbat, right? Right? But if we're, keeping the Sabbath in our synagogues or assemblies, and we're writing notes, to keep track with our studies, what does that have to do with, how does that even break a law? Writing, erasing, and tearing, right? Okay. The scripture says, mark the word, right? Mark the perfect man, even when we look throughout history, the apostles and they wrote on some of the Torah scrolls. They had little side notes stating what things meant and how to pronounce certain things. So, we can clear that up with just history as well, right? Business transactions, they're right about that. We can't do business, right? We can't buy, sell. We know that scripture, right? Driving or riding in cars or other vehicles, right? Now this here, you know, you know, we have to think about the traveling, right? It's not the same traveling as getting on an airplane, right? How you going? And just going and doing your own pleasure. Say for instance, you're going to, and again, we're dealing with the Sabbath. So we're going to service and we drive to service, right? To get there. It's almost like riding a camel to get there, even though it's a difference, and the thing why they say this, we can't drive or ride cars, is because, you're letting a fire be burned, right? You're letting the fire be burned. But think about it. Is it for your own purpose that you're letting this fire be burned? And again, there was still a work to be done in the temple that was accepted, that didn't break the law of Yahweh. The priests had to keep the fire burning day and night, and they had to offer these sacrifices, right? So again, it was being done, fire was being burnt, but for the purpose of keeping with Torah, he was completing the work of Torah by setting certain fires, for the sacrifices and keeping the lamps burning, right? Setting the Shabbat candles, as they say, right? Shopping, okay. Yeah, we agree with that. Using the telephone, okay. Again, we have to watch our conversation, so we can give them that one. As long as the conversation is about Yahweh, we like to clear our minds, as they say, have your minds clear as we go before the throne of grace or mercy, right? But again, you can use the telephone and it won't be breaking the law, just long as you keep the conversation and people know it's the Shabbat, right? Turning on or off anything which uses electricity, including lights, radios, television, computer, air conditioners, and alarm clocks, cooking, baking, and kindling a fire, gardening, grass mowing, doing laundry. Of course, some of those things, right? We shouldn't do, right? But again, if you're studying, even they had, the lamps burning to study the Torah on the Shabbat, right? So, all right. Just wanted to show a few of their again, like tradition of man, like the Pharisees and scribes, okay? So let's get into Nehemiah 13, verse 15 through 21. In those days saw I in Yehuda, Judah, some treading wine presses on the Sabbath and bringing in sheaves and lading asses or donkeys, right? As also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem. So that's the definition of burdens. And, bringing all these things in, right? Sheaves and, you know, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day, right? And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals, right? So they were selling, bringing in burdens, selling, right? There dwelt men of Tyre also therein, which brought fish and all manner of ware and sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Yehuda and in Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Judah and said unto them, what evil is evil, right? Thing is this that ye do and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus? Did not our Elohim bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath, right? And this is stuff that the churches is not teaching. And this is in their Bibles. We're reading the same book, but they're not Sabbath observant, right? And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, all right, and it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark, right, before the Sabbath, right, again, that Friday evening, Sabbath, right, evening, morning, one day type thing, right, as we stated in Genesis 1, first video. Sorry about that. Okay. I kind of forgot where I was at. Wait. Okay, they profane the Sabbath. Okay, did not your fathers thus? Did not our Elohim bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to, be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut and charged that they should not be open till after the Sabbath, And some of my servants said, I ate the gates, set or again, cultivating and guarding the house. They can stop. All right. So did I stop the video? I turned off share screen, but okay. All right. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if I stopped the share or I don't know what happened. All right. All right. So that was Nehemiah. Let's go back to our slide here. And next thing we're going to talk about is be a witness. Notes from scripture. Take heed. I'll look at a few witnessing notes. Okay. Matthew 7:13 through 23. It talks about the way of the truth is going to be a way that is less traveled. Keep that in mind. And few human beings will find it, said to say. Also, people will come in the day of judgment and be turned away because they call the Almighty by a wrong name and or pagan titles. We talked about it, right? The world is saying God, but it's really Elohim. The world is calling on different names for the creator, but his name is Yahweh. Romans 2:17 through 24. This verse tells the job of a Jew or Yehudi or our purpose. Also, verse 24 talks about the Yehudi taking the name of Yahweh away from the people, which comes from the Jewish Talmudic customs, not in any way Torah. So we just discussed that, right? That's what they do. It's the tradition of man, their law, right? Almost like pharisaical. You close the door to the kingdom. You won't make it in yourself. As Yahshua was telling the people, right? 2 Corinthians 11:1 through 4, teaching another name and doctrine, right? That's what the world is doing. First Corinthians 11, 13 through 15. Who are these people, right? You know, and so let's look at that, right? Who are these people? First Corinthians 11, 13 through 15. I'm sorry, y'all. All right, here we go. Bear with me, bear with me. It says, judging yourselves, is it comely that a woman pray unto Elohim uncovered? All right. Doth not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him? But if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given her for a covering. All right. Let's go back to and of course we talked about how Hebrew women covered their heads, right? Right. Let's see. Second Corinthians 11, 22, Romans 11, 1, Philippians 3, 1 through 6. Was Shaul a Christian or a Yehudi? And did his religious status change after his encounter with Joshua? Right? We discussed that in the other video, right? He was Yehudi from the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, right? Revelation 3, verse 7 through 10, Revelation 2, 9, Revelation 14, 12, holding on to his word and his name. Also, the synagogue of Satan. It talks about the synagogue of Satan. You know, we just discussed that, you know. It, this is how you can tell who the children of Satan is and who the children of Yahweh is, right? You know, the children of Yahweh holds to the name of the creator, Yahweh, and they do his instruction, right? While the synagogue, you know, of Satan, you know, they make their own traditions of man, you know, they have different names, you know, they want to hide the name, you know, or uh, put burdens on you that they won't even do themselves, you know, the Pharisees, right? You know, Joshua even made mention of the Pharisees, like he said, do what they tell you, but don't do as they do. You know, they make you carry these burdens that they won't carry, right? You know, hypocrites, right? He calls them hypocrites. You know, so it's not righteous to be a hypocritical person, right? Revelation 17:3, Revelation 16:9, Revelation 13:6, the names of the false mighty ones, as well as the world blaspheming. You know, it's blasphemous. Uh, you know, you're committing blasphemy, and it's idolatry. You know, to go forth saying another name that's not his, right? You know, David said, "I hate every false way," right? Revelation 14:1, the mark that is used to save us, what the angels are looking for to gather us up. You know, in the catching away. And this thing happens after the tribulation, right? And it's not called the rapture. It's not called the rapture. All right. Exodus 6, 2 through 3. What our forefathers knew the Almighty by and called him. Exodus 20, verse 7. What does it mean to make wrong use of the name of the Almighty? Notice what he says here. Jeremiah 10, 1 through 5. You know, it talks about not to put a Christmas tree or what has come to be known as Christmas tree in your house. Not to celebrate it, right? It's pagan, you know. Jeremiah 10, 1 through 5. Isaiah 30, 27, how Yahweh views his name. It will judge us, right? Isaiah 33, 22. Yahweh, it is he that will judge us and save us. And we see Salvation is even in the name of Yahshua. Yahweh is salvation. Yahshua, that's what it means. Yahweh saves. Yahweh is salvation, right? And so on and so forth. You know, there's just a few witnessing notes, and I'm gonna close out of that. And this has been the end of part 2. I hope you got something out of that, and hopefully, this has recorded everything I've said, and you can see the slides real well. But I thank you for tuning in, and until next time, shalom. May Yahweh be with you.